Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series of translations in theater where I take a look at some of my favorite or most important fan translations of video games of all time. And today we're taking a look at 7 Deadly Mansions or 7 Mansions. Depending on how you translate it, it comes up as 2 different things. But whatever the title of this game is, it's a super intriguing and interesting survival horror game for the Dreamcast. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link down below as well. But this is an important translation because here's the actual deal. I did not know this game existed until I heard it had a translation some time ago. I've never come across this game until I read an article saying it was finally in English. So I figured, hey, it's a new Dreamcast game I didn't know that existed, and now I can play it, so I should probably check it out. I played it and realized it's absolutely a great game. It doesn't look like much off the start, but when you get into it, it is extremely intriguing. And I love all survival horror games, even the janky ones. This one reminds me a lot in ways of Ill Bleed. It doesn't have the same mechanic. This just has straight combat, not photographing or marking things that you think might hurt you, but it has different levels. The entire hook of this story, 7 Mansions, is that you're going through 7 different environments. And we're starting off here in this hospital, but every single mansion or environment is going to be completely graphically and tonally different. So as soon as you feel like you've been playing in one space long enough, generally you're done with it and you get to move on to the next area. And the story that is here, because it is, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s, it's a little bit weird, but it is intriguing enough. But right off the top, in this hospital with all that blood on the ground, you can tell something is going wrong, and all of a sudden that alarm goes off and these giant gimp chain mask men, that's I think the best way you can describe them, they're wearing gimp masks for sure, are out to attack you, and you need to figure out what to do, because right now at the beginning of the game you do not have a weapon whatsoever. You cannot defend yourself, so the only thing you can do is run. And I like that the game sets you up so weak in the beginning, because you got separated from your friend here and you can't even attack until you find a weapon. And I like that they played around with the survival horror aspect. You're not a military member that goes in with a gun because you know what you're walking into. You stumbled into the situation, it's gone bad, and now you need to figure out a way to defend yourself and get out of the situation in its entirety. I think it's just a fun way to kind of preface the game and start it off. But right off the top, we need to find Kai here because she is lost, but the door that she went beyond is now locked and the elevator's not working. And I'm sorry, I called her Kai, that's our character's name, I just wasn't reading it right. But I love that you've already separated yourself, and the entire mystery is what's going on in this hospital? Why are there giant monsters and gimp masks running around? Where did our friend go? And why the hell is everything trying to kill us? It's a good inciting incident to kick the entire game off, and I definitely appreciate that the developers have kind of left things ambiguous enough at the beginning. You'll see we have a knife now, and we can finally defend ourselves, so the game pivots to being completely defenseless to now having a crappy weapon that we have to defend ourselves with. Now the thing about this game is, was a translation necessary? In this instance, probably not. You could stumble through this game with a walkthrough and still enjoy the gameplay elements of it, but the story is such a wild and unique tale for survival horror that understanding what's happening in the game and not just how to get through it is really important, and it adds a lot of dynamic layers to it. So in that instance, I think it is great that we do have this translation, and it is more of a modern translation as well. This hasn't been out for that long, but the fact that it exists gives us another awesome game to play on Dreamcast in full English, and you always have to love that. And I even love how they play with camera angles here. I would say that this game is slightly better than most survival horror games, and you will see that I can fight in the first person, we can run around in the third person, or we can do fixed camera angles. So this game will let you kind of decide what you want it to be. But the soundtrack is also quite intriguing as well, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll come back and talk more about why this game is a hidden gem in the survival horror series. But enjoy. I mean, to call it a soundtrack is hard. It's more ambiance. It's ambient noise that's just occurring, but it really does drive home the overall creepy vibe of this hospital. And you'll see here now that we did find that screwdriver, we got the admission key card, and we're able to reunite ourselves with our companion. You'll see here in the corner here. The voice acting is not terrible. It's not good, but compared to some of the other games of the era, I would say this is relatively like a C plus effort, which is like an A for the late 90s, early 2000s. Although this game does some strange things. You can see that she's afraid and she's crying, and we need to improve her mood before she will follow us along in this game. So what do? We pull out a lollipop, the same type that you'd get at a pediatric doctor when you were a kid, and that stops her from being scared entirely. Now, I like candy as much as the next person, but if giant monsters in gimp masks were chasing me and trying to kill me, I think it might take more than just a lollipop to get me moving. It might take me like a couple shots of gin at the minimum to get me to decide to keep going forward. But now that we have her, and there's a little bit of talking going on until you get control of your character again, we can progress with this story and continue moving on to try to get to the second area in the game. You'd think there was a voice there just telling you what was going on, but we don't know who that is yet, and we need to figure it out. And I love all these books on the shelves here. I would say graphically, this is pretty impressive for the Dreamcast. It definitely has some weird interlacing things going on. It's got a little bit of a weird motion cadence, but not so much that it really bothers you. And honestly, this is still early enough in the 3D era where we have to say, at least for the environments, they look realistic, they don't look cartoonish, and they work for what they need to be. But you'll see here now that we have moved into this locked area because we were able to get our companion back, we got to a dead end, but there's a strange switch on the floor. And because this is, a mansion-based game, kind of like Resident Evil, of course there's going to be a lot of different puzzles that we need to solve. So if we go up to this lectern in the middle here, we found a note earlier with a passcode, and if we enter that in, this entire room completely rotates around and gets us to another area of the hospital. And I'm not sure who the architects were back in the day for survival horror games. The Spencer Mansion and Resident Evil had all these weird puzzle elements to it, moving rooms. This game here has an entire room that rotates 180 degrees to let you have new access to new areas. I don't know that these houses actually exist in real life, but if I ever get really rich, I may make a survival horror house for myself just to have some fun with it. You can't get in the front door unless you put a gem or a crest in, and then magically the door unlocks. It would be great, and that's a new life goal that I didn't realize I had until I was doing this voiceover. But now that we finally have gotten to the last room in the hospital, you're going to see Dr. Schneider. And what we're going to find out is that he's been doing gene splicing experiments. And of course, as opposed to trying to cure diseases, he's a mad doctor, and he decided he needed to make a new life form. I don't know why doctors are always going mad in these games and trying things they shouldn't, but I guess it's a really big trope of this genre. Umbrella Medical Corporation, they decide to make monsters versus curing cancer. This game, he can edit genes, doesn't cure any diseases, just makes monsters, and on top of that, he puts them in gimp masks, so he clearly has a psyche that should be researched because God only knows what's going on with him. But hey, maybe that's what happens when you get that smart, you become evil. And you'll see that this gigantic monster is now coming from behind the desk. And I would say my background is a filmmaker. I went to school for it. It's what I do as a living. The camera angles and the presentation in the cutscenes in this game are definitely better than most of the era. Now, because this is a boss, you would expect something a little bit harder, but 4 knife slashes and he is down. The combat in this game is fair. It's a little bit hard every once in a while to strike your opponent, and you do get plenty of life kits, but it does get harder as the game goes on. And now we're talking to this artificial AI who's going to unlock the hospital for us and let us continue onto this island, because all of these structures are on an island. It's like the island of Dr. Moreau in some strange ways. And now we're moving on to the second area in the game. I've only shown you basically the prologue, and this game gets better and better, and because of course it has been translated as a fan translation, we can now understand and appreciate the entire story. So I 100% recommend this game. Play it. It works perfectly in Demule. I played this on an original Dreamcast with the GDEMU. However you want to play it, check it out. But I will be back next Tuesday with another episode in Translation Theater, and I'll have videos throughout the week as well. Leave me a comment down below if you ever played this game or heard of it. Do me a huge favor, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you're curious who this woman in the next mansion is, you should probably play the game. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.